Hello, Nate.
Hey, hello, Greg. Hello, everybody out there in the internet world, ready to talk some birds and birding with us. My name is Nate Swick. I am joined by Greg Neise. I've got the sound on somewhere. It's on Twitter. I'm turning it off so it's not in my ear as a lag. But welcome to everybody to What's This Bird Live, whether you are watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We are excited to have you here to talk birds, birding, albino clapper rails, whatever you want to talk about here. I think we might as well own it.
You pulled that up quicker than I thought you were gonna.
Yeah. Anyway, what we do here is no play up. Sorry, I keep stepping on you. Go ahead, Greg.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's been a few weeks. Last time it was Ted Floyd. We're grateful to be joined once again by Greg Neise, who joins us despite being under the weather a bit. It seems that the COVID bug has finally nabbed our colleague Greg again, as it did for me a couple months ago. Greg, I hope you're feeling all right. He's feeling well enough to identify some birds, though no promises on whether he gets them right or wrong.
I'll make it through the next 45 minutes or so, but then it's back to the couch and crashing.
That's all we ask. Yeah.
I'm going to apologize in advance if I cough or sniffle a little bit. But so Nate, have you been out birding lately?
Oh, I see what you're doing. Yeah, I was actually out this morning with a quick walk around the local battlefield park here with my kids. But I see where you're going with this. No one cares about that. Greg, how's that coffee you're drinking?
Hey, I'm drinking it out of my favorite Chicago Skyline mug here, and I will tell you, the silky smooth flavors of ABA Songbird coffee is feeling really good.
It is a fine
going
brew.
down this battled throat.
No doubt. Well, folks who enjoy coffee and birding will be delighted to know that for the month of July, for the entire month of July, new members to the ABA will receive a bag of Songbird coffee in their preferred blend and their preferred roast. It is a great cup of coffee, a just cup, as they say. And as most birders know by now, one of the best things you can do to help protect bird habitat is to drink bird-friendly coffee. And this is Smithsonian bird-friendly coffee. That is the gold standard when it comes to coffee that is grown in these shade-grown plantations in the neotropics and that are friendly to birds as well as friendly to excellent tasting coffee.
Absolutely correct. That is Smithsonian certified, fair trade, shade-grown coffee. And for those who don't know, the reason for shade-grown coffee is when a coffee finca is planted typically on a hillside, a mountainside. They cut down all the trees, they plant the coffee, and there you go. Shade-grown coffee. They cut out the undergrowth, but leave the tall emergent trees to leave the habitat for the birds and insects in the canopy overhead. As a result, the coffee takes longer to grow, but it's richer, and it has to be picked by hand. So it tends to be a little more expensive because it's a little more intensive, labor intensive, but it's really good stuff.
It's worth it. Hey, you know what? It's good coffee, and it's worth having a better cup of coffee with you in the morning. I've actually birded a shade-grown plantation down in Guatemala many years ago, and it is fantastic birding. Not only the tanagers and motmots and hummingbirds and all the stuff you expect in any sort of forest in the Latin American tropics. It is just chock-a-block with North American migrants as well. Townsend's warblers, Wilson's warblers, water thrushes, summer tanagers, scarlet tanagers, western tanagers, all of them together. It's just a really birdy place to be. And you can really see how things like shade-grown coffee plantations really do help the birds wherever they come from, wherever they breed, both native and those that winter down there.
And for a limited time,
God,
I love saying that. For a limited time, you can get a bag of shade-grown Songbird coffee from the ABA for free.
Yeah, try it out. join the ABA, get a bag of Songbird coffee. Unfortunately, this is only for our American members. Canadian members can restrictions may apply, but there is a little bit of a deal for Canadian members as well. Sorry about that. Shipping to Canada is kind of a bear for the United States. But for the rest of you, please check it out. Join the ABA, and you'll get a bag of that coffee, and I'm sure you'll be hooked.
If you hit that URL there, aba.org/coffee promo, you will find a join form, and then you will be able to choose which of the 5 different blends, brews you would like, including a decaf option.
Yeah, no judging if you go for the decaf option.
Absolutely not.
What happens online stays there. So please join the ABA. Please consider supporting this program, this organization, and getting some coffee along with it. Greg, let's move on to what we're here to talk about today. Let's talk about birds. What we do here in this What's This Bird live program is that if you didn't already know, the ABA runs a few groups on Facebook, one of which is called What's This Bird? It's essentially a crowdsourced bird identification community. People take photos of birds. They may not know what that bird is. They post it on Facebook, and our friendly community will identify that for them pretty quickly with an excellent track record, I do have to say. And what we do here on this bi-weekly program is that we'll pull some of those photos that are interesting in some way or another, maybe indicative of the season that we are in, the sort of birds that a lot of people are having issues with. And Greg and I will talk through those identifications. And of course, we'll take questions from folks in the crowd. If you have any comments, questions about birds, birding, doesn't necessarily have to be about the stuff that we talk about here. Please let us know in the comments. We're happy to answer those questions. We're happy to talk about birds for as long as you will let us do so.
Yeah, so we'll jump right in here. We have a little bit of a theme, which we've done now. I've lost track of how long we've been doing these, Nate. It's our 3rd or 4th year
since the pandemic started. So I think we started before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and we really ramped it up at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. But every year in July and early August, we have kind of a theme, and that is ratty passerines. Because this is the time of year when there are juvenile birds around, but also the adults are, for many of our passerines, are at their most worn plumage, and they don't look like they do in the field guides for the most part. So it presents a little bit of a challenge for new birders, but there's always clues.
Yeah, molt is one of those difficult times of year for birds. It's very energetically expensive, which means that they have to put a lot of energy from the food that they get into replacing those feathers every year. And so they tend to do it immediately after they finish fledging those chicks. So, midsummer, most of the chicks are out of the nest for those birds that typically only do 1, or even some birds that do 2 broods. And at that time, it is time for them to start worrying about themselves. The parent birds start worrying about themselves and replacing those feathers. And birds look rough right now. There's no 2 ways about it.
So we've got this is a small bird. We can tell just by looking at it, the leaves and the branches and everything. Kind of a long tail, kind of brownish, kind of streaky. The bill is it's thicker than a warbler or a flycatcher or something like that. But I don't know. What do you see in here, Nate?
Yeah, some things that stand out for this bird for me is just kind of its overall very streaky appearance. I mean, it is awfully rough looking, no doubt about it. But for the most part, those streaks I think are pretty legit. It also has got kind of a relatively short, conical bill, so it's quite broad at the base and narrows very quickly. So it's a kind of a triangle here, very different from like a long, thin warbler bill or a gnatcatcher bill or some other kind of similarly sized bird. Relatively short wings. I don't see any wings sticking very far out beyond the body, and a long tail. This is one of our sparrows, Greg.
I would agree with that. And a few things that we see here is the really sort of messy streaking underneath, and messy in terms of not just the streaks themselves, but the actual feathers are messy and messed up. And this is typical of juvenile birds. Like there is an actual we get kind of loose, and when I say we, I mean the birding community gets kind of loose with using terms like juvenile and young and things like that. But juvenile actually is a plumage that is before what most field guides have as juvenile or immature. Although Sibley does a really good job with that. So they have this
distinction,
juvenile plumage that you see only on the breeding ground, and they quickly molt out of that into their first formative, which is what you see in the fall very often. And one other thing to note with this bird is the bill is smaller than what you might expect, because the bird's bills continue to grow in their first few months. And so, a young juvenile bird like this, the bill is a little bit smaller. But looking at especially the face pattern, we can see that brown cap, a brown cheek, a gray supercilium, so that gray, big, broad gray eye line, over the eye and under the cap, and then that dark mustache stripe with a kind of a whitish, buffy malar next to it, and then the spot in the middle of the chest, and all of those things go together and make a song sparrow.
Indeed. Some of the things that you would suggest, song sparrow, one of our kind of classic Melospiza sparrows. See them all over the place. I certainly have them in my neighborhood. I'm sure you do as well, Greg. It's one of those birds that's found pretty much across the United States and in southern Canada as well, even all the way up into Alaska. It's a very widespread bird, and there's a lot of variation among the song sparrows that you can be found in the eastern United States or the eastern North America versus those in the west. This in Idaho, this one might be a little bit darker than the ones that I typically see where I live in North Carolina, but for the most part, it's mostly similar. And you and that little. Did you talk about the gape there? I was responding to comments in the comments, so I might have.
I did
check that a little bit. But
you
can also tell that this is a juvenile bird because it shows a little bit of the sign of a gape, which is that sort of orangey yellow border on the corners of the mouth,
base of the mouth.
Exactly. We see a lot of that in birds this time of year, and that's one of the telltale signs that this is a bird that is relatively recently out of the nest. What it is essentially like the target for the adult bird when the chicks are in the nest and they open their mouths wide for their parents to come and feed them. That gape helps provide like a target so that the adult birds can pop that sucker right down in the middle of the baby's mouth and not miss it.
Right.
And they retain that for several weeks after they leave the nest, and so you can visually see. Sometimes you see birds that have, baby birds like this where the bill and the bare parts kind of look a little bit smaller. Some birds kind of grow into their bill a little bit more. I'm not sure if song sparrows do it. There's something about this bill that kind of seems small to me. It might be the color and sort of the background. But yeah, the gape just says juvenile bird, and then you kind of go from there. Why this plumage looks a little bit different, a little bit messier than you might expect.
If we wanted to get into the weeds here, someone might ask, and correctly so, why isn't this a Lincoln sparrow? Mm-hmm. And Lincoln sparrow,
Lincoln sparrows in Idaho.
It's a subtle difference. But if this were a Lincoln sparrow, I think the bill would be finer for one thing. It would be longer, darker, thinner, and all of the markings would be finer. The eye, the supercilium wouldn't be quite as broad. The malar wouldn't be quite as broad. The mustachial stripe wouldn't be as dark, and there'd be a little more buff color, and the markings on the back especially would be finer.
Yeah, absolutely. In my sense, I don't know, there's kind of a color difference between those two.
Exactly. It's a Lincoln sparrow.
Lincoln sparrows tend to be a little kind of a buffier gray brown, as opposed to song sparrows, which tend to be a bit more.
Lincoln sparrows kind
of
like
rufusy,
worm-eating warbler in that they have this unique color that is unlike any other species in our area. And when you see it, once you are familiar with that kind of cold, gray, kind of buff color of a Lincoln sparrow, it's unique, and so.
Indeed.
Right.
So song sparrow, young song sparrow, go out and look for those in your yard. I guarantee you won't have to look terribly hard.
Yeah.
No matter where you are in the ABA area.
I love this picture.
Denali AK, yeah. I had to pause a little bit when I was kind of going through the photos that you sent before we did this, Greg, when I saw this photo, because it threw me off so much. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about why. What we have here is another.
The why is the theme of the
why is the
show.
thing, right? Yeah. So this is obviously another very small bird. If you can tell from the leaves around it and the twigs on, you can certainly tell by the size of the bug that is in this bird's grasp.
Yeah.
That's I don't know what that is. A wasp or something? I don't know.
I think it's
not very big.
Remember, this is Alaska. The mosquitoes are the size of airplanes up there.
That's fair. That's fair enough. So what we've got here is a relatively all lime greeny, on the front, kind of darker green on the back. Plain, very plain. Not a lot going on in this bird. No wing bars to speak of. Very long, thin, dark bill. Definitely puts it in the insect-eating birds. If if the insect in its jaws is not enough of a clue there, this is what looks like one of our New World warblers, one of our parulids. Not much else going on except for that bright orange streak there on top of its head, which is pretty wild.
I would not call that a streak. I would call that a crown.
Oh, it's a lot of orange. Yeah, all right. So, I mean, let's not beat around the bush here, Greg. This is an orange-crowned warbler, which much of us on the continent is, generally speaking, one of our kind of drabber warblers, not terribly flashy. We identify it as much by its lack of field marks than by any particular field mark, and certainly not by its orange crown, which I admit I have never seen before.
I have seen it, but not like this. Usually you'll see it in the fall, you get a little glimpse of the orange when the bird, if the bird raises its crown feathers or something, you'll get a little glimpse. But this at this point in summer, again, look at how ratty and beat up this bird's plumage is all over.
That's right. It is ready to start molting those body feathers.
Exactly, sure. and the crown feathers are worn off, and it's revealing the orange. And boy, next time I'm in a museum, I'm going to have to grab a specimen of orange crown warbler and look to see whether
crown a little bit.
How that, because I'm imagining that the bases of the feathers are orange and the extremities are green.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think it's overlapping feather tracts, but it could be.
Yeah, like in a ruby crown kinglet or something. Yeah,
right.
Or a king,
right.
or one of the,
I don't know.
The tyrannic flycatchers. Yeah.
But in any case, this is why it's called orange crown warbler.
Yeah, it's nice to see that for once in a while. Orange crown warbler is famously on the list of those, perhaps among birders, the poorest named birds in North America, just because we don't see that much. But that's pretty wild. I can't get over that. That's a great photo.
I just sit here and look at that. Just sit here quietly and look at this picture for a little while longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Drink your coffee. Drink your songbird coffee there.
I know the caffeine's kicking in. I'm getting a little goofy
there
here.
There you
go. Okay. Here is another ratty passerine. This one from San Diego.
San Diego, California. Yep.
And this,
all the birds are looking pretty rough these days.
This bird's beat up, missing some primary wing feathers, some flight
feathers
wing feathers
there too.
Yeah.
Do you want to start from the beginning on this guy?
Well, it's got kind of the same bill as the last bird we saw, at least from this angle.
Similar, from this angle for sure. A little bit thicker, a little bit larger, certainly on the base. I like that upright posture. A little bit different than the sparrow and the warbler we've looked at before. Long tail.
One thing about the posture before you get off of it. This group of birds typically sit like this, and as you mentioned, it's upright, but they also tend to droop their wings a little bit. like this bird has. So the tail is out between the wings rather than the wings folded over the top of the tail. And this is a common posture, common pose for this family of birds.
Indeed. So it's got a very large head in comparison to the rest of its body, kind of all over browny gray, very dingy. Obviously, this bird is ready to molt. A little bit darker on the head than the rest of the body. I'm particularly interested, though, in that the underparts, that salmon apricot sort of buff that runs from the middle of the chest all the way through to the vent, to the undertail.
Yep.
Seems notable, Greg.
It is notable, and it's not. It is a different color than the yellow tubing. I'm assuming this is at the outfield of a baseball diamond.
Looks like it, yeah.
On
the outfield fence. Yeah.
Keep the kids from running into the fence. And it's not a reflection of that, as you pointed out. It's a salmon pink color, and the three things here. I'm looking at this through 2 or 3 different monitors at the moment, and one of them is quite small, and so the bird is very tiny in one of the images I'm looking at. And the things that stand out are the posture, the dark head, the overall gray color, and that little salmon wash on the belly.
Indeed.
And if you go flipping through the passerines, you'll find very few birds that look like that, and the one that looks just like this is the Say's phoebe.
Sayornis sayi. The bird's so nice they named it thrice. Say's phoebe, one of our more common western flycatchers, can be commonly found in parks, any sort of open areas, baseball diamonds for sure, and where they show up in the east, where they do from time to time. They tend to like that sort of stuff out here as well. We had a Say's phoebe in my home county that spent the entirety of last winter at a vineyard. There are these, the vines, the trestles that they hang the grapes on, and in the winter those are the vines are all gone, and it was just hanging out there next to a big pond.
Illinois, we being in the western part of the Midwest, we get Say's phoebes pretty much every year. But a couple of years ago, I think it was 2020, we had a Say's phoebe that nested with an eastern phoebe.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Former ABA board member Matt Fraker spent the summer documenting that pair and their offspring, and it was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, birders in the eastern part of the continent are probably familiar with our eastern phoebes. Same genus, Sayornis. They all basically have the similar sort of posture, that sort of upright posture. The wings kind of droop sometimes. The head is very large with kind of a broad, thick bill. You can even see the rictal bristles on this guy, which are those little feathers, those hair-like feathers that are on the outside of the bill that essentially act as a net for flycatchers to capture flying insects when
give them a
when
little
they sally
extra
out.
help.
Yeah, our three North American.
On some birds, like nightjars, and even some owls and other birds that catch moths and things at night have rictal bristles, and some of them
they
are
can
quite
be kind
fantastic.
of big too. Yeah. They all sort of sit the same way. They all sort of like the same thing. The Say's phoebe bob its tail. Eastern phoebe is known for bobbing its tail. I think Say's phoebe does it a little bit, but maybe not quite as much as Eastern phoebe. But those are all sort of behavioral things that you're going to be looking for phoebes. All the phoebes, they sort of do similar stuff. They like to be near water. They like to be near open spaces. And they are all kind of, they're all kind of doing their thing. I would expect an Eastern phoebe at a ball field just down the road as much as I'd expect the Say's phoebe at a ball field in San Diego.
Absolutely.
Suzanne Wagner notes that your shirt kind of matches the Say's phoebe belly there, Greg.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah.
So,
why'd you have to do
here
this?
we have a bird in the woods, or at least in some pretty dense foliage. And as Nate was talking about earlier, with the song sparrow, we can see this bird has a fleshy yellowish gape, which tells us it's a juvenile bird. I think we can also tell. This is not a. Okay, so this bird is not necessarily in juvenile plumage, and we can see those long tail feathers with the pointed tips. Those are fresh. The wing panel looks nice and fresh. The bird doesn't necessarily look. It doesn't look as ratty as the other three that we have been looking at. So what do we got here?
Well, I mean, there are some things that are quite similar to the bird we just looked at. The upright posture, the long tail, the large head, the thick black bill, the long and thick black bill, I should say. It's not like a conical bill.
There.
We can see some rictal bristles on this bird. It's got a couple wing bars. That's sort of interesting. It doesn't have... Well, look, I'll cut to the chase. So there are two genera of flycatchers in North America that look vaguely similar to this. And that is our peewees in the Contupus genus and the famously difficult Impidonax flycatchers in the genus Impidonax or however you want to pronounce it. I don't really know. I've heard it about 3 different ways. They all have wing bars. They all are kind of brownish, grayish, green all over. Peewees tend to have much longer wings than empids. That not super helped by this bird. I'm not really seeing the wingtips. Right? Maybe I can see a little bit of the wingtips on this guy.
I think we can see enough of it. There's enough of a suggestion there.
Yeah. Empids tend to have an eye ring. Some empids, especially willow and alder, tend to have less of an eye ring than some of the other empids. Like at least where I live, Acadian least have kind of a significant eye ring out in the western part of the continent. Pacific Slope and Cordilleran have a famously exaggerated eye ring. I don't see an eye ring on this bird.
No.
Empids usually have a bicolored bill to some extent. You know, the mandible is going to be a little bit orangey or pale at least. This bill is pretty much all black, at least so I can see. So I'm leaning towards peewee on this bird, Greg. Am I correct?
I would agree. It's got that dark head. Now again, you know, an eastern. I'm sorry. What did you say that you're leaning towards?
Peewee, eastern wood peewee. That's my guess on this one.
Okay,
I'm lack of an eye ring
on this one. I'm going to.
Okay, you're thinking it's a willow flycatcher, are you?
No, I'm thinking it's a juvenile eastern phoebe.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, maybe you're right. I usually like to see a little more yellow on an eastern phoebe.
Yeah,
and the wings seem shorter. But all right, I'll give it to you on that one. That's a tough one.
Excuse me. I think this is a juvenile eastern phoebe, and the reason is I think we can see enough of the wings to see that the wingtips are not the primaries are not that long. Typically, a peewee goes halfway down the tail or close to it.
Yeah, they do have very long.
An eastern peewee. This is in Virginia. An eastern peewee usually has, almost always has some yellow on the lower mandible of the bill. And the feet look
you're right.
kind of big. Peewees have ridiculously tiny feet.
Yeah,
and we can see the feet pretty well here. So I'm going to go with eastern phoebe, a juvenile, a young eastern phoebe.
You convinced me. Well, it goes to show, and the head is kind of wrong for Contupus, which tend to have a little bit of a peaky head as well.
They do. They have a little bit of a crest.
Well, it goes to show, you know, these young phoebes that are just out of the nest, with those wing bars, they'll throw you.
They will. I remember a few years ago, birding in Northwest Illinois about this time of year, and we came across a young phoebe that was feeding along a fence line, and we followed this bird for probably an hour trying to get pictures of it because we had no idea what it was. And it was basically in this plumage, and part of it was the feathers on its head were kind of messed up. But I mean, we went back and forth from everything from a peewee to an alania to, boy, it was ridiculous just how confusing this bird was. And then finally, when it popped up and showed itself well, it's like, oh boy, eastern phoebe. Yep.
There you go. If I had seen it in life with it bobbing its tail and doing its phoebe thing, I probably would have been a little bit easier.
Absolutely,
and that is
photographs can be a little bit difficult.
So some clues you rely on that you don't see.
Identifying birds from pictures can be ridiculously difficult, much more difficult than seeing the same bird in the field, for certain.
Yep, for sure. Eastern phoebe. That's the danger of high wire bird identification.
Excuse me. So this is our last one here, and we're going to do something a little bit different after we're done with this one. So we've got a small bird on the grass on the ground. It's brown, streaky, kind of looks like the first one we saw.
For sure.
With the conical bill and the streaky face and the big supercilium. What do you got here?
Well, it's another sparrow. It's sort of streaky. It's got what looks to be a relatively broad-based short bill. It's got a lot of streaks all over its face. I'm looking at those eyebrows, and those are pretty significant eyebrows. It's like old man curled up at the edges eyebrows. Hard to make a lot out of this in terms of kind of structure, and I really like to use structure when I'm looking at sparrows, because the different genera tend to have kind of a different feel, different sort of look about them, and I'll help you narrow those things down. But there are a few things that stand out to me. For one, the big eyebrows, the kind of light streak on the breast, the kind of chonky body. This is almost a borb as opposed to a burb.
It is. And look at how big and strong the legs and feet are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this is one of our zonos, Zonotrichia, kind of our larger sparrow genera, one of our larger sparrow genera. And, this is a bird that usually vamooses from where I live in the summer, so we don't usually see a ton of them, and certainly not juvenile birds. But we do have a few that hang around into early June, but that's usually about as late as they go. This looks like a young white-throated sparrow to me, Greg.
I would agree, and you can see some of the white crown coming in right over the top of the bill, and the big bold whitish supercilium coming in, and the streaks on the flanks and everything, and on the face and the upper chest. That's all juvenile plumage that they lose very quickly, but it does have that clean white throat starting to come in.
Yep, for sure.
So this is a young white-throated sparrow.
Weird angle.
If this were a swamp sparrow, a few things. One, I think it would have more of a gray cast to it, especially on the face. The bill would be a little thinner,
a little bit smaller.
And I don't think that the feet would be as strong and big as they are, because they have a very different feeding method. I mean, white-throated sparrows,
they're very
the zonos,
sneaky. Yeah,
they go in the underbrush, and they use those big feet to move leaves and debris away to find things that are underneath.
Yeah, like towhees almost.
Exactly.
They kick them. They jump up and they kick both feet back, and it scratches out a little spot there on there. And swamp sparrows tend to be much more meticulous in their feeding. They're a little bit quieter, a little bit more sneakier. They feed up on the top of
forbs, and they pull seeds out. And
Yep. So
I thought I'd make it through this without coughing every 30 seconds, but that's not happening.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. I thought you were being ambitious, but we'll do the best we can. Bear with us. So those are all the birds we have today. If you have any questions and want to ask them in the comments, we're happy to take them. I'll pull back through and check and see if we missed anything. Some comments from everybody. Brandon Percival notes that Colorado's second ever yellow rail showed up this week. I did hear it, but I saw the recordings of that one. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
the first record since 1906. You makes you wonder though, is that because there haven't been any yellow rails in Colorado, or because no one has found a yellow rail in Colorado?
I would say the latter.
Yeah.
If I had to guess,
it seems like they would be in there, but they're very obviously very easy bird to miss. Famously easy to miss. Stephen Williams says saw a couple. What's that?
I was going to say, I'm watching Facebook here, and Facebook, you guys are being awfully quiet. So if you've got
Stephen Williams talks about common nighthawks. Asked that he saw some squabbling over downtown Rolla at 3 p.m. a couple weeks ago. Is that normal? He's only ever seen them in lights at night or in the early sunrise. My guess is those are birds that have a nest nearby and are possibly feeding chicks, and therefore they can no longer stick to the night shift. They've got to go out and find bugs all 24 hours a day for the most part. So they're nocturnal birds, owls, nighthawks, things like that tend to be a little more active when they've got chicks and that need feeding. So that's probably what was happening there. Well, Greg, I've got a game that I usually play with Ted Floyd on the American Birding Podcast. If you guys are listeners and are familiar with that, it's called Random Birds. And what we do is essentially take a list of birds and a random number generator. Thank you, Google, for both of those. And talk about, let the random number generator pick a bird, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Memories, identification tips, great experiences, how to find it, stuff like that. Anything. And this is a game that all y'all at home can play as well. In fact, we encourage you to do so.
Yes.
Because we are going to be using the entire ABA area checklist of extant species, which is about 1,092 species of extant birds. I took out all the code 6 birds, of which we probably would not have very many memories. And we're gonna play this game, if that sounds good to everybody out there.
Before we do, I just want to say it's kind of a strange thing as I was putting together the images for today. Last night, doped up on all the cold type medicine I could possibly get my hands on,
as one does.
I had this vivid memory, this vivid memory of when I first saw greater Ani in South America, and it was and it was paddling down a stream in a remote part of the Amazon in Peru, and suddenly we were just surrounded by a couple hundred greater Ani, and they were just silent and just sitting there in the low shrubs watching us, and we paddled through. It was just this really weird cool situation. And for the first time in all the years that we have been doing What's This Bird, today there's greater Ani showed up in What's This Bird.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Really?
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I didn't see. Yeah, greater Ani is one of the birds that was featured in Jennifer Ackerman's excellent book that came out a couple years ago, The Bird Way, because they have this really unique nesting strategy where basically it's like colonial nesting. All the nesting pairs in a given area in a group just pile all their eggs into one nest, and then they all kind of take turns incubating them. So you have these large nests with I don't know, like a lot of eggs in them that they all kind of work together to incubate and then feed and raise. And it is a really interesting strategy, a unique strategy among the world's birds. So yeah, greater Ani. It's not on the ABA list. I don't know if there's any, if it will.
And they're huge, and that's what makes it really weird. Like when you see them, I think they're like 23 inches long. I mean, they're big birds. If you've seen groove-billed or smooth-billed Ani in the southern parts of the United States or in the tropics, you see a greater Ani. I mean, they're just massive.
Big weird cuckoos.
Big weird cuckoos. So
Jim from Jim's Long Road. Before we get going, he has a question in YouTube. Asks, "Birding is overwhelming. He's waiting for his order of the Beginner's Guide to Birding." That's very nice. That's actually a book that I wrote a few years ago. So thanks for that, Jim. What other resources are good for learning to identify birds? What would you suggest, Greg?
I would suggest buying your local field guide. There's a couple of ways you can do this. One, you could get the ABA area field guides from the ABA. We do one for many states. I think there's some Canadian provinces coming up soon. Or do Sibley East or West, depending on where you live. Personally, when I my method for learning birds, and I took a little break from doing birds many years ago, and was doing frogs. And when I got back to doing birds again, I kept a Sibley next to the bed, on the bedstand, and before I'd go to sleep, I would just pick a group like flycatchers or warblers or ducks or whatever, and spend 30, 40 minutes going through and just absorbing those before falling asleep.
Yep.
And it works. At least it works for me.
When I first started birding, I was young, and my family had a number of field guides just kind of scattered around the house, not just birds, but also amphibians and reptiles, mammals, things of that nature. And you got to treat those books not so much as reference guides to use in the field, but as sort of resources you can use to study before you go in the field, right? As you say, Greg, like having that book next to your bed, put it on the coffee table, put it in the bathroom, wherever you're going to be able to be somewhere, and just kind of look through it without feeling the stress of feeling like you need to find this bird, right? So you just want to get comfortable with the birds in it. And you'll be surprised how, I don't know, quickly it takes a different amount of time for different people, and you shouldn't feel like it has to be really fast. But it'll come a little by little. You'll feel a little more comfortable where the birds are in the book, so you can find them faster when you are actually using your field guide in the field.
Absolutely.
But you just get more familiar with the birds that are around you, and then you'll be, less apt to need that field guide in the field. And then you'll spend more time when you're actually out looking for birds, looking at the birds rather than digging around in your book, which can be frustrating and overwhelming, no doubt about it.
When you're just starting, when we do this, when Nate and I do this program, we pretty quickly narrow it down to a family or a group of birds, or a genus. But if you're just starting, the challenge is not which sparrow is it. The challenge is, what is a sparrow? Is
it a sparrow? Yeah.
Yeah. And by sort of absorbing the field guide, you learn what a sparrow is versus a warbler versus a flycatcher versus whatever. One other book that I think is really helpful.
I think that may be a tip in my that book that you're ordering, Jim.
And Nate's book is fantastic. And one book that I think is also really good is David Sibley's Small Birding Basics Guide. It's a little book, but that's another one to keep by the bedstand, nightstand.
Yeah, and certainly groups like What's This Bird and Merlin is another great resource too. If you don't know what it is, try and get that photo. Or at least try and take a photo in your mind, or write down what you're looking at, and that way you can focus on the bird that's in front of you before you get into the field guide. Because a lot of times you'll take a quick look and you'll immediately run to your field guide, and then you'll start looking at the birds and say like, oh, that's how you tell them apart? I didn't notice that. And so you want to make sure that when you have that bird in front of you, you are getting as much information as you possibly can from it before you take that memory to the guy that you're using to help you identify. It can be overwhelming. Like it can be, for sure.
It can,
but you'll get there. You'll get there, and you'll feel that progress
too. It's overwhelming, and then you think you got it, and you're like, okay, I can tell a sparrow from a flycatcher, from a duck, from a grebe, and then all of a sudden you find that it's like peeling back an onion, and that part of it never stops. Which is what's really cool about birding, is like you could do it for 50 years like me, and
there's always things you learn.
There's always
don't be afraid
new.
To make mistakes.
Exactly.
Because the number of mistakes
for us on that one.
Hey, I just did it publicly with an Eastern Phoebe today, so it happens. You get into your own head.
What was that
Andy Cratter in the comments notes that a free-flying greater Ani was in Key Biscayne, Florida in 2011, but it was considered to be an escapee. So there you go. Maybe there is a greater Ani somewhere in the ABA area. Greg, shall we hit the random number generator and see where it takes us? 131. Do you have a guess where that might be on the ABA checklist?
131. Okay, so that's pretty low. And
all right, this is the random number generator, not me.
Okay.
It's Grooveville Donnie. Yep.
Okay. This is really, really bizarre because what got me thinking, this is the absolute truth. I am not making this up. What caused the dream of the greater Anis last night is in thinking through this, what we might do here today. Groove-billed Ani was one of the birds I thought what might pop up in the random generator. And thinking about my memories of groove-billed Ani was that I found the first state record of groove-billed Ani in Illinois in 1978.
There you go. The groove-billed Ani is a bird I have not seen in the ABA area. It's widespread throughout the neotropics, and I've seen it there. But it shows up in South Texas for the most part, and in the summer months. And I've never been down there in the summer months. I've only been down there in the spring when I was a kid, when we go down for a spring break. And then for the Rio Grande Valley Birding Festival in the fall. So before and after groove-billed Anis turn up in the valley. They are a cuckoo. Susan Nelson notes it's a cuckoo. It's a weirdo cuckoo.
It is a cuckoo. It's a weird cuckoo.
Black, funky
often
billed
called
cuckoo.
Tick bird because they tend to sit on the back of livestock and pull ticks off of them. They're weird. They don't look like they should be able to fly, and they don't really fly very well. But they're funky-looking birds with a massive bill. But if you look at, they do vagrate. At least they used to.
We have a record for North Carolina. I want to say it's like from 1890 something, and it was a collected bird somewhere in the coastal plain. So they do turn up in weird places sometimes.
We have 3 records for Illinois.
I think there's an Ontario record too.
Yep. And the one that I found actually after the fact turned out to be the second record because the first one was misidentified as a smooth build.
Easy to do. Groove and smooth build Anis, very similar, kind of difficult. They're in different places. Smooth build Ani is historically was regular in South Florida, though they got really difficult there for a while, and now they're somewhat regular now, but very, very localized. If I'm correct, I know Andy Crowder's on there. He could probably give some more information on that. I recall that they're real hit and miss these days, but groove-billed Ani can be all over the place. Heidi McCulloch says saw an Ani on the bubbler at Padre. I assume that's Texas. Don't remember which one. Probably groovy Ani. If it's on South Padre, that'd be a wild sight. Groove-billed Ani on a bubbler, on a bird bath. That'd be cool.
I'm trying to say. Last time I saw groove-billed Ani was on the collared plover twitch with John Pushock, and that was actually the first time I got to hear them because it was in August, and there were quite a few around, and they have a kind of a high pitched kind of a
squealy voice,
kind of thing.
All right. Let's hit the random number generator again and see where it takes us. It takes us all the way down to 942. I'm scrolling.
942. Now, what version of the ABA checklist is this? This is the latest.
The most recent one. The most recent one.
942 is going to put us, I think, somewhere in the wood warblers.
Nope.
Further. How about further up?
Further down.
Oh, further down.
Wait, no. Further up. They moved the wood warblers, didn't they? Yeah, the wood warblers are way at the end. Yeah, it's in the sparrows, Greg.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to go there. So let's just, I don't know what's the number again?
942.
942. Let's say bell sparrow.
It is not, but it is an honorific. It is Casson sparrow. For John Casson, former head of the Smithsonian.
Another vagrant I've seen in Illinois.
I've seen this one in North Carolina too. The first record, I think it may have been the same year because there was a year, I want to say 2012, maybe it might have been 2012.
That sounds about right.
It was a year where there was a big drought in the Southwest, and there were Casson sparrows that kind of flew out all over the place into the east, and there was a record in North Carolina, which is the one that I saw. There was the record in Illinois, which was at Montrose, where you saw it, and there was one in Massachusetts too. Not at Montrose.
No, it was at North Point Marina. There was a later one at Montrose.
Okay, that may be what
but then that 2012, I think it was 2011, something like that. There was one, if I remember correctly, there was one singing on territory in Indiana. And there were birds,
the one was in singing on territory in North Carolina. It was doing the skylarking thing. So they have this really cool behavior where they display on their territory where they skylark. Essentially, they kind of flit up into the air and they sing their song and kind of drop kind of slowly. It's very cool. And the one that was in North Carolina, still our only record, was doing that when we saw it. It was in May, I believe. Yeah, very neat record, very cool bird.
It is really neat the way that they respond so quickly to some birds when they're faced with that kind of an environmental disruption, they just don't breed. They just, if they can't find habitat, if they can't find food or whatever, they just don't breed. But some birds disperse, and cassin sparrow is one of those that disperses.
Yeah. So, funny story about the North Carolina cassin sparrow. So it was a state first. A lot of people went down to go see it. I was in a car with a number of different people. We all kind of carpooled down. It was in Scotland County, which is down in the Sandhills, down in the south central part of the state. And literally 5 minutes before my group arrived on the site, someone spotted the state's third record of fork-tailed flycatcher in the exact same field as the cassin sparrow. And the fork-tailed flycatcher, someone got a photo of it, and then it disappeared, and no one ever saw it again. So wow. We missed it by 5 minutes.
Patagonia picnic table effect there.
Little bit of that situation. Jill's White Smith says cassin sparrow been able to find them for 3 years in a row at the exact same location in Bent County, Colorado. Yeah, cool. They're also down in South Texas. To go back to South Texas, great spot to see cassin sparrow there. In near where the Aplomado Falcons are, near Laguna Atascosa. I can't remember the name. Old Isabel Road.
Old Isabel Road.
There's cassin sparrows along that road as well.
The thing that stood out when I saw that cassin sparrow in Illinois was my lifer. I've seen them since quite a few times in Texas. But that bird was, I believe it was a spring bird, and there were many people looking for it, and it was out at North Point Marina, which is where we have the gull frolic, and just a scrappy kind of mowed lawn, kind of just a not very well maintained lawn with some plantings around the edges of it. And the thing that struck me, everybody's standing around looking for this bird, and we're not finding it. And then one sparrow, like all these sparrows are flying into the grass to feed, as they do, and then something will startle them and they'll fly out. But then one of them went running across like a mouse. And
yeah, they did that.
That was the cassin sparrow. It had its head down and just tore across the path and did not fly, but it ran.
Yeah, that's a cool looking sparrow, kind of pale, kind of a dark cap, neat bird. Someone notes in Facebook with regard to smooth-billed Donnie, Cinnamon Stewart, small flock in St. John, Florida last February. The locals call them black parrots. Seems about right.
Oh, look at this. I just reloaded the Facebook page, and now I see all these comments here that were not loading before.
Yeah, it's been acting a little weird. I'm trying to comment, and it's not letting me. We'll figure.
Well, so...
All right, we got time for one more, Greg.
Okay.
551.
551. I'm going to say that's pretty much right in the middle.
It's a perfect one.
Pretty much right in the middle. Out. So I'm going to say somewhere around flycatchers, swallows.
Not quite.
Or the upper end of the non-passerine, so woodpeckers. Pileated woodpecker? Oh no, burrowing owl.
Burrowing owl.
I was gonna go.
It's the ABA's 2022 Bird of the Year. Burrowing owl.
Are you sure you didn't? This is random.
It's random. I am beholden to the number generator.
Okay, there is some magic in the air here today.
Must be. Yeah, burrowing owl. What a great bird. It's the ABA's 2022 Bird of the Year. Greg, I got my lifer burrowing owl in South Florida. I got it at Cape Coral in the neighborhood in, what is it, Lee County? Mm-hmm. You drive around and it's just like a normal neighborhood, and then in the empty lots there are these PVC pipes with burrowing owls in them. And yeah, what a cool little bird.
Yeah, I've seen them. I can't remember if I got my lifer in South Florida or in Illinois. I got a vagrant in Illinois in 1980, yes. I believe. But I've also seen them in Texas and in North Dakota.
Yeah, we've had one in North Carolina as well. It was along the coast. So the funny thing about them is that there's not really a whole lot of desert. I guess the sandhills are sort of deserty. But they go to the coast for the most part, and so they end up on these little islands where they pile up the rocks in the inlets, and it was just kind of sitting. So you go down to the beach and you put up your scope and you look over to across the inlet to the next island, and there was like a little burrowing owl shaped lump sitting on the rock right next to the ocean. It's a very odd situation for burrowing owl, but they do turn up in weird places.
Well, you
on
said
the East Coast.
You said the funny thing about burrowing owls, and I think that
any number of funny things about burrowing owls.
Christina Ball, the artist who did the artwork for the Bird of the Year, captured it really well in her paintings. Pretty much everything about burrowing owls is funny. They are characters. They're really wonderful birds. And you watch them. I mean, I remember last time I saw burrowing owls was in South Texas. And we were out. Yeah, we had a bus. We had a bus like out. I think it was on King Ranch somewhere, the Norris division of King Ranch, and so we're running up and down the roads looking for Sprague's pipits and burrowing owls. And we come across a couple burrowing owls, and there were furrows in the freshly plowed dirt, and there were burrowing owls out in the dirt, and you'd see this little head pop up. And then it would duck its head down and then run like crazy and then pop up again and like stand full up and then look at you and then duck back down and then run down through the furrow and come up again. Really, really
Mia McPherson notes, she calls them desert clowns.
They are desert clowns.
Stephen Williams says he saw a burrowing owl on the rocky bank of the San Diego River bank. Yeah. Heidi McCullough says kind of gimmies in Kansas on the Cheyenne and Quivira trip. Although I was out there this spring doing a festival, Prairie Chicken Festival, and we went to a couple prairie dog towns, which are cool on their own as well, looking for burrowing owls, and we didn't see any. But I think I might have been just a little bit early. So this was like early April, and I think they hadn't really returned in numbers yet, so they hadn't come back to some of those places. Susan Nelson notes, used to be a bunch of them in the undeveloped area east of Alameda County in California. I don't think there are as many now. Seems to be the case with a lot of birds, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Though Stephen Williams says many out by Salton Sea. Cinnamon Stewart says, got lifer burrowing owl inadvertently driving into Ted Turner's ranch in South Dakota. Come on, Ted. Give us a break.
At least he's got burrowing owls on his property. That's good.
That's true. That's a good sign. Good. Too many people out west don't take kindly to prairie dogs, and then the burrowing owls kind of disappear from there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're almost up to an hour. Greg, you made it. You survived.
I survived
the whole thing.
I am going to go back to the couch and collapse here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so just a reminder, if you are interested in helping support these sorts of programs and also the organization in general, please consider supporting the ABA with your membership, aba.org/join. And, of course, if you join as a new member in the month of July, you will get a bag of Songbird coffee brewed by Thanksgiving Coffee Company. They do a fantastic job. We have been partners with them for a very long time. It's great coffee. It is for a great cause. And, might as well try it out. Join the ABA. Give it a shot. And
I will tell you honestly.
Says joined in June.
I will tell you honestly that I'm kind of a Duncan. Duncan is just fine.
Oh, come on.
No. Hear me out. Until you try shade grown coffee,
Yeah, it's good coffee. Everyone seems to like it.
It is good coffee. It's just better.
It's my go-to brand. I'd hoped that I would have a 5-pound bag next to me in time for this. I ordered some earlier this week, and they haven't come yet.
Well, I've got a small bag right here.
Got the small bag. They're the only ones that still sell 5-pound bags. Birds and Beans doesn't sell 5-pound bags anymore. But if you want to buy it in bulk, Thanksgiving coffee is the way to go. And the shipping is free on orders over $50.
And you can subscribe and save as well.
That's right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks. It will be, it'll still be July then. We'll give it one last plug. It'll be July 30th. It'll be July 29th. That Matt Igleski. Thanks for that. Trying a bunch of bird-friendly coffees. Thanksgiving has been one of his favorites so far.
Thank you, Matt.
That's very good. We'll see you next week, guys. Everybody, go see some birds. Enjoy, if you can, the summer. Go see some ratty birds. And Greg and I will be back